Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Mystic Visionary Podcast. This is your host, Zia, and here I am to pick a word for the week. If you don't know what that's about, go to episode 1 to learn more, or check the link in the show notes. All right, I'm going to go over to my little magic box, and I'm going to pick a word. Lots of little slips of paper left in the box. Let's find the right word for today. Oh, I'm feeling it. There it is. This is it. Compassion. Wow, that's a good one. Compassion is our word for this week. All right, I'm going to go meditate and on that word, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back from meditation. That was an interesting look at compassion, I have to say. And I went into my place of going out into the field and allowing information to come to me. One of the biggest things that came to me about compassion was understanding the difference between compassion and empathy. Where compassion, I think, is, especially in the new paradigm, compassion is this idea that we can see other people that are having struggles and that we have compassion for them because of those struggles, and we don't judge them. We understand and accept that people go through all kinds of challenges, and we cannot understand what it's like to be in their shoes. We can look at a situation and say, I've had a similar situation, and I did this and this and that, but we don't know what it's like to specifically be that person. And that's, to me, what compassion is. Compassion is looking at a person, accepting that they're having some kind of a challenge that we have no way of completely understanding, and accepting them without judgment and showing them our care and concern. That is what I think compassion means in the new paradigm. And I think that taking away the judgment, because where we're at now in the current paradigm, the collapsing paradigm, which I see it collapsing more and more every day, is that we want to blame other people for what's happening to them so that we'll feel safe and think we're protecting it from happening to ourselves. So if I don't do what that guy did, then I'm safe. So, man, I'm just going to blame him for being such a jerk, or blame him for circumstances that were out of his control, or whatever. We don't know the circumstances, but we are looking at each other as, well, I don't have compassion for that person because basically they must have asked for this, or they made choices that made this happen for them. And if I believe that, then if I don't make those choices, then I'm safe. That is judgment, and that is not compassion. That is not kindness. That is not anything. And that is what's happening in the world today. Just today, I was reading something on social media where I live in Oregon. They just took down a homeless encampment that they had set up. The city had set it up. And they took it down because the weather got really cold, and they wanted people to go to warming centers. So they opened warming centers. They closed down the area where the homeless people were having a fenced in area where they could all put up their tents and, have a place to stay. So they took that away and told them they had to disperse because it's too cold and you have to go find someplace warmer. And people were divided by that. Some people were like, that's horrible. Why did you take that away from them? Other people were like, well, good. They need to get out of there. All they're doing is making a mess. And, we don't need to keep supporting these people. And, there was these two sides to this. And as I was reading it, I was, I don't know the answer to that problem. I am not even going to try to address that problem. But what I was reading is about the divisiveness between the two sides. The people who were like, oh my gosh, this is a horrible thing to do to homeless people. And the other people who were like, hey, get a job. That's what the rest of us had to do. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do something with your life and quit getting a handout. And then the other people were like, we need to do everything we can to help them. It's like, okay, we have to come to a point where we can have a conversation and not have these polarities, these vast differences between one another. And then it went into the name calling of each other on the social, on the post. Then there was like people then started to attack one another. And I was just so disheartened when I read this. I thought, wow, what happened to people's compassion? And I really don't know. And the problems are so big and the divide is so wide that people are having such a hard time having compassion for one another, because we are so connected or so entrenched in being right or standing up for our side. I don't even understand it. All I know is that it has to end. And when I look at compassion in the new paradigm, the compassion that I'm holding space for is what I just explained. It's understanding someone has difficult circumstances that you cannot understand, even if you have been through it. That's the point. Every person experiences life differently. Every person has a whole set of circumstances that led them to a certain point, that led to decisions they made that we cannot understand. But what we can do is give those people compassion without judgment. And I'm not talking about homeless people. I'm talking, or unhomed people. I'm talking about everybody. We don't know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, make the decisions they had to make, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. It's just basic human compassion for another person who might be suffering and not judge them. I know that's hard because we have been so conditioned and trained to judge people. Again, like I said, if I don't do what they did, then I'll be safe. Well, you know what? Everybody has to experience what they have to experience. And compassion is such an easy thing to give to people. It's such a gift to give. I don't even think we completely understand that gift of compassion that we have as human beings to share or to allow to give freely to another human being. It's a miraculous gift, but we have been ignoring that gift. And along these same lines, I have to say that lack of compassion that we have for other people, we also turn on ourselves. I think about the number of people that I've talked to or people I've run into, people I know, my friends, family, lots of people who are so hard on themselves, that beat themselves up and chastise themselves and berate themselves over some mistake they made or something they said that they wish they hadn't said or something they'd done that they wish they hadn't done, and live with shame and guilt and all these feelings of pain and anguish and depression and all kinds of things because they don't have the ability to show their own self-compassion, to understand that sometimes things happen. Sometimes we make decisions that maybe aren't the best, but why do we judge ourselves so harshly? And why can't we show ourselves some compassion? Why can't we say, you know what, I'm just a human being doing the best I can, and sometimes I make decisions that aren't in my best interest. And boy, did I learn something from this experience that's going to help me in the next experience. Boy, I'm going to show myself some compassion because, boy, I really had to learn this the hard way. And not judge ourselves. It's like there is that component that it sort of negates any kind of compassionate thought. When judgment is connected to compassion, there is no compassion. Whether it's for people in your life or whether it's for yourself. In order to truly have compassion, it has to come from this open heart and a sense of acceptance. You don't have to approve of the way people lived. You don't have to model them and say, gee, I want to do that too. All you have to do is accept that that is their life and show them some compassion without judgment. I think that's the key to what compassion means. And I think we have forgotten that. So the next step in that is the whole empathy thing. Empathy is a whole nother animal, because empathy goes beyond compassion to the point where you're feeling the pain of the other people. And I think that we have a lot of empathetic people in our world, and that they are being hurt by being overly connected to the pain of others. And that's not compassion. That's empathy that's kind of gone awry. And I am one of those people, so I understand that very well, intimately understand that. But what we have to get to is to understand also that empathy is a wonderful thing when you can openly understand that it's more generalized and not take it so personal. When you take on the feelings of another person, then you're really not doing service to yourself or of them. You're not really healing them. You're not really taking a burden from them. You're just putting a burden on yourself. And that's not good either. So we have to really have a different viewpoint of compassion and empathy. And they're way different things. The other thing I've thought about lately too that goes along, or when I was meditating, this came up for me, and the judgment part of this is huge. But also in the blaming game. We want to blame things on people to, make us feel like there's a reason for things. Like this happened because of these circumstances, and because this landlord did something to this tenant, then that is a bad landlord. This guy is bad, and he did this bad thing. So that makes the person who you feel compassion for a victim, an innocent victim. Well, we got to stop that as well, because yes, of course there are victims. They're everywhere. But blaming the victimizer for that and using that as a means to feel compassion for another person isn't right either. That is because we don't know the circumstances. This is, again, we start putting these stories together that make sense to us, and then we decide who deserves compassion and who doesn't. And that's not our job. That's not our job. And I think that we all need to just step back and take a look at ourselves and try to put yourself in the other people's shoes, even though it's 100% not entirely possible, but you can have this sort of sense of understanding and allowing without judgment. That is the key here. I know I've said that 10 times now, but that is the key. I would love to get any feedback from people. If you hear this and it triggers something in you, please leave a message. I would love to hear your response to what you really believe what compassion looks like in this new paradigm that's emerging. I know that we need more of it now than ever. I think we're really lacking in the compassion department. So feel free to give me your views on the whole compassion idea. My last thing is going to go back. Last thing I want to say before I end this podcast is, again, the whole self-compassion. I have been working on this with myself for the last, I would say, 5 years. And I've read a book on, self-compassion, and I've followed some people on Instagram and who are people who specialize in compassion, and I've read books, and there's a lot that I have looked into as far as this goes. And I believe one of the hardest things that I've ever done was to show myself the same compassion that I would show someone else, because I'm extremely compassionate towards other people, but I'm really hard on myself. And that learning to show yourself compassion, I believe, as I've said in other podcasts, is the inside job that needs to happen before we can even understand being compassionate towards other people. I've thought it's easy to show compassion for other people, but it's not easy to show it for myself. Well, that's backwards. I should be able to show compassion to myself first. It's sort of like the airbags on the airplane, when the oxygen masks come down, they say, mothers, put those oxygen masks on yourself first and then take care of your kids. Well, this is the same idea. Show yourself compassion first. And once you understand what compassion looks like and you feel it within your own being, it's much easier to give to other people. Not that you need to stop practicing compassion for others, but what I really think people need to do is start practicing compassion for themselves. We really need to understand what it feels like, what real, true, honest compassion for ourselves looks like. And that's a big task. So I think that's where it begins. Everything about the new paradigm, honestly, is an inside job. We need to find whatever it is we're looking for outside of ourselves. We need to find inside of ourselves first. And it's already there. It's already there within. All we have to do is tap into it. All we have to do is turn inward and find it. And all we have to do is practice those principles. Like, what does it mean to be loving of myself? What does it mean to be compassionate towards myself? What does it mean to be kind towards myself? Ask yourself that. And then start there, and then let that compassion that you've learned to give to your own self to flow out to others. And the last thing I want to say, and I've said it a bunch of times already, there is no place for judgment in compassion. So that needs to go out the door. And start looking within. I know that's what I've been doing. And I've found it's not an easy thing to show yourself compassion. But it's getting easier and easier the more I do it. All right, I think I'm going to finish right there. I think I've said enough, but I would appreciate any feedback if you all have any feelings about what's going on in our world with compassion right now. I would love to hear it. And I also want to shout out to all the people all over the world now that are listening to the podcast. I love finding that people from other countries are listening. So if you're out there listening, I appreciate you. All right, have a good week, and I'll be back next week with a new word. If you want to learn more about the 5 guiding principles of the new paradigm, you can listen to my audiobook, which is The Pocket Guide to the New Paradigm, which is a free audiobook on YouTube. I'll link it below. And the other thing that I have available is the Heart Archetype Quiz. It's a short quiz that answers the question, am I listening to the call in my heart? And you take the quiz and you'll discover what might be blocking you from living the call of your heart. And I think that's what we're all being called to do right now, is to look inside, connect with our heart, and follow its guidance.